Hello, I'm David Vrabel. I'm a member of the Zen server team at Citrix. I'm also one of the co-maintainers of the Zen subsystem in Linux. So in between the last Zen summit back in October, there have been 5 Linux releases, 3.12 to 3.16. We've seen myself and Boris come on as co-maintainers. And we've also ditched Itanium support, the Zen support in Itanium, which mostly allows us to improve the ARM support in Linux for Zen without having to worry about fixing up Itanium support, which no one used. And I think it was broken for a good few years before we finally decided to get rid of it. So there have been a number of new features that have gone in the various releases. Blockback on ARM can use physical devices, which greatly improves performance compared to having to use the I think they had to use the QEMU backend previously, which is slower. We've got experimental PV8 support. We've got the FIFO bench to 8 channels, which removes the one of the scalability limits. So you can now have tens of thousands of event channels now, which is useful for DOM0 and driver domains. We've had a few drivers get enabled in ARM. I mean, most of the ARM drivers you basically get, all the ARM support you effectively get for free, because a lot of the infrastructure is common between ARM and x86, but we've seen a couple of drivers. And we also have in 3.16 full support for PCI devices that have the MIO regions above the end of RAM. Previously they would sort of work some of the time depending on the driver and so on, but now it all just works. We've also seen a number of performance improvements. PV ticket locks, which have been ticking along for a very long time in the background, originally by Jeremy way back in, I don't know when they were started, but they were picked up by someone from IBM, worked on them for KVM, and they finally went in. Some good scalability improvements with large numbers of vCPUs and contended locks. Blockfront had the non-persistent data path reintroduced, because whilst the persistent grant support that went into 3.11, I think, improves performance in some use cases. If you have a backend that doesn't support persistent grants, then having a block front do a copy, having blockback do the map is worse performance. And now block front, if it detects you don't have a persistent grant supporting backend, doesn't do any guest side copies, and it goes quite a bit faster. I think Felipe has a presentation later on about general block performance improvements, and there's some net front performance improvements. Again, I think Zoltan has a more in-depth presentation later on about these, but we've got grant mapping instead of grant copy in netback, and multi-queue, which improves single VM or single VIF performance improvement. We've got some things that are up and coming that are basically nearly done. We've got the vNemer support, the Linux part of that. It's basically waiting on agreement on the Zen ABI changes needed for this, but the Linux side is basically good to go. So as soon as the Zen side is in, Linux side go in. PV SCSI backend and front end, which allows you to pass through SCSI devices into a guest and have the guest be able to talk directly with SCSI commands to the physical SCSI device. That's currently going through review with the SCSI maintainers. And I mean V5 was posted today, I think, and we'll have to wait and see what the SCSI maintainers think of that. And we've also got the Linux side of the perf tool. This is the perf tool, which uses the vPMU stuff in Zen, and the Linux side is good to go. It's just waiting for, I think, agreement on the hypervisor side. there are some things that this is sort of a list that I have. This is my list. There's obviously other things that other people are working on. These are things I would like to see happen. If anyone wants to do any of them, that'd be great. Improved testing, particularly of live migration. If you're a distro vendor, then please test live migration, because your guests don't work at the minute. We've made a number of improvements recently, actually fixing a number of issues with migration, particularly with PVHVM guests. We're now going from failing in one every 50 times to failing one every 50,000 times or something like that, which is a pretty good improvement. I would like to see PVH move from being experimental. Ultimately, PVH is going to be the standard. It's going to be the replacement of PV. We're going to PV mode in Linux is going to be phased out, probably in a long time frame. So 6+ years or something like that before we actually phase out PV. Yes, M2P override replacement. M2P override is this crazy thing in the kernel for supporting the grant dev device needed for user space backends, like disk backends like QEMU and stuff, and it doesn't work in certain circumstances. It's basically a fundamentally broken design and needs completely replacing. So non-trivial. I'd like to see PAT support, which allows you to set up uncached and write combining mappings, which is useful if you are using certain types of graphics drivers inside DOM0, mostly if you're doing certain kinds of interesting virtual GPU type stuff. That might actually get superseded by just switching to PVH, where it all just works, so we might not actually ever fix that. And the other thing I would like to see, which is as we get more PV drivers, particularly embedded people looking at all sorts of interesting PV drivers for various other devices, I would like to see a common state machine for the ZenBus connection protocol, rather than everyone hand-rolling their own slightly differently. We should really have just common infrastructure for all of that. No doubt there are many more things that other people are interested in, but and that's my personal list. That's the end. If anyone has any questions. Oh, okay. That's good to know. No? Any questions? Okay. Thank you.